And now, from the great state of Mississauga in Ontario, Canada, it's the Ted Woloshyn Podcast. Brought to you by ETP Canada, providing estate administration with ease. ETP Canada. And Tom's Place, for the finest in men's fashion. Tom's Place will suit you. And now, here's Ted.
I'm standing brazenly tall for Canada. Ron James here. Let's keep her going. Proudly stand together in the land of 2 4s and 5 0s and butter tarts and buy Canadian. Check the labels. Make sure it's made in Canada. And let's just give her. Shop as if your country depends on it. Keep your money in Canada for Canada.
There you go. That, of course, as he mentions himself, is the great Ron James. That is part of a new series of commercials which has been produced by the Pro Bono Group. We've had them on this podcast in the past. We'll talk a little bit about them in a second. It's a new series encouraging Canadians to shop Canadian, which makes an awful lot of sense. And in today's climate, even more sense than that. The executive producer is Mike Occomore. He's going to join us in a moment. He got tied up. Larry MacInnis is creative director of Pro Bono, and Larry and Ron have joined me now. Gentlemen, how are you?
Nice to be here.
I'm good.
I should mention that there are currently 2 commercials that are airing, one with yourself, Ron, and one with Rick Mercer. And I thought to myself, well, isn't that an interesting take on the part of Larry and Mike? Here we've got such an important discussion going on in this country. And who will we hire to be the first these spokespeople but comedians? And I said, that's as about as Canadian as you can get, unless you can get a hockey player.
Well, the rebel voices of comedy in Canada, you know, I was honored to be asked to be part of this. And Larry and I also did a campaign when the hurricane passed through our Borning lands of lobster blood a few years ago. Hey, Larry?
Yeah, we're both Cape Bretoners, Ted.
I'm glad.
Yeah, I am too. Yeah, I lived there till grade 3, raised in Halifax. But you know, in light of your,
you were 18 when you moved.
I was 18 when I moved from. Then I went to Acadia and I majored in binge drinking and hot knives. I like to tell people. Thanks, Larry. I like to tell people I'm from a day where a hashtag was something you got for getting too close to the hash knives.
Yeah.
My buddy became a very successful. You know, a lot of guys moved out west after I graduated in '79, and anyway, he ended up doing real well and with his company and stuff. And
I used to love to see the expression on my mother's face. She used to, "What's going on with these knives? How did you buy these knives?"
Yeah, every time they came home from a camping weekend.
That's
What's
right.
with the black?
And the elements in the stove are all bent. What's going on here?
Good times, man. Those bulletproof days of youth.
Let's go.
It was great that we, that Larry and Mike had a couple comedians launch this, and it's so imperative that we literally stand on guard for thee now. Mm-hmm. And what's heartbreaking about everything, guys, is that, I mean, I grew up idolizing America, you know. I mean, they were the land of cool stuff. I mean, that country'd throw a party and a parade just because it was Tuesday.
Yeah.
And Larry and I know, I mean, when I was a kid and you saw, I'd go camping into the Cape Breton Highlands National Park with my family, and we're in the Eaton's True Line tent trailer. You're not allowed to touch the canvas walls of when it was raining or it would leak. Meanwhile, personification of Mount Olympus pulls into the campground, driving a 60-foot plated, hermetically sealed Airstream living unit. Jesus, I thought it was the Jetsons.
It was. They were all chrome and huge, and they were all from the States.
Weren't they something, Larry? And
They were amazing.
They're amazing, and they're driving these big Delta 88 lime green or Cadillacs, pulling it. I mean, they brought the kids over that night. We all went over, and they gave us a grape tang. Grape tang. I hadn't even seen the orange stuff yet. So he idolized the country. I mean, Jesus, look at
I know.
look at Sunday night television growing up. The Beachcombers coming on just meant Walt Disney was over.
Yeah.
But now the Tangerine Genie and his legions of hairless hobgoblin tyrannical technocrats are threatening to dominate the friggin' world. I mean, I'm ready for jihad because Microsoft Word won't let me spell neighbor with a U.
I know. I know.
I mean, it's got us all riled up, and justifiably so, because we're a nation that we were a great next door neighbor, just the best neighbor to have. And yeah, we depended on them, but we signed treaties for that. We negotiated for that. Lend-Lease during World War II, we moved stuff across the border. I mean, we were pals.
You know what? I mean, as bizarre as this may sound, for some people, they have to bite their lip and say, boy, they almost missed the days of Mulrooney and Reagan. Because at least whatever you thought of their politics never got to this point, and at least we maintained a solid relationship with the United States.
Well, they weren't aberrations of the American id run amok. At least Reagan wasn't. Sure, he lit the fuse for what's to come. And, Mulrooney was Mulrooney. But they still seem to be playing with the same set of rules, those post-war rules that we built the successful Western democracies on for the last 80 years. Yeah. But holy jumpins, I mean, he's thrown the rule-based orders of international law out the window. I mean, who'd have thought the arch enemy of America is now Putin's puppet?
No. Let me go back to you, Larry, here for a second. The idea for this campaign came from you and from Mike, or was it from an outside source?
Well, it was more personal than that, Ted. I was on the original tariffs, if you recall, were to go into effect on February the 4th. On February the 2nd, that was a Tuesday. On February the 2nd, a Sunday, I was visiting my son and my grandchildren and my son's family in Uxbridge. I live in Markham. And just a regular Sunday visit. It was the Sunday between the Super Bowl, between the season and the Super Bowl. So there was no football. I was up visiting my son, and we were kind of, the subject of tariffs came up, and I was aware of them, and I was, like most Canadians, concerned about them, but it wasn't personal to me. And then my son told me that his best friend, the best man at his wedding, person I've known since he was 5 years old, almost an extended member of our family, he built a successful business, and he was in danger of losing the business if the 25% tariffs come in. And I literally had to sit down in the kitchen, sit down at the table, and let that run through my head. So on the way home from Uxbridge to Markham, my wife drove while I sat in the car and composed the first draft of our very first PSA, which has been running for a month now before we got Ron and Rick involved. What happened was I got on the phone as soon as I got home in Markham. I called Mike. Mike was all in on the idea. Mike does all the heavy lifting on getting actor to waive fees and arranging the studio and casting and all of that. And by Tuesday, we were in the studio to record. And by Wednesday and Thursday, that original commercial was on the air all over Canada. And it's been running for a month now. And then we suddenly occurred to us that Ron had done such a fantastic job on the Hurricane Fiona commercials. Ron, by the way, he's too modest to say it. Ron won the Broadcast Dialogue Award for that campaign as the best commercial performer of the year in Canada. And just being himself. And so we called Ron, and through Ron, we were able to get Rick involved. And on Monday, we're going to have Arlene Dickinson record from Dragon's Den, and Hayley Wickenheiser from Canada's goal-winning Olympic hockey team. And then we have others standing in line to do some more for us. So it's been, and radio stations have really, really come on board. On all our campaigns, actually, for these past couple of years, radio stations have been really generous. We get between 12 and 15,000 airplays a month across Canada on our various campaigns.
Isn't that wonderful?
It's amazing. Listen, hats off. The corporate Rogers and Bell and the big corporate guys, Stingray and Chorus, they all pitch in on everything. and all of the independents are on board, especially with this. As soon as we hit the air, we like the tariffs. Remember, the tariffs were backed off on the Tuesday, but they were still in play, it turns out accurately so. But radio stations and people at radio stations, this is the thing about radio, and we all know this because we have radio experience, is that radio is about companionship and making a human connection. And people in radio really always want to jump in and help out. And so from the ownership suites down, right down to the receptionists at the radio stations and the listeners at the radio stations, everybody is pretty much 100% all in, especially on this campaign.
That's so great.
It is. Interesting information. Halifax research firm recently published this information that 63% of Canadians are currently actively seeking Canadian goods. I'm wondering if that poll had been taken a month and a half ago, what would the number be? And if these tariffs eventually, when they will come to an end, if they come to an end, I should say, what will that number look like then? I suggest that it's not going to drop. It's gone up a lot since 2 months ago, but in 2 months from now, even if the tariffs settle down, I suggest that number will not drop a lot, because it's not just about not buying American. It is about trying to build an economy that can sustain itself without any particular nation, whether that be the United States, France, or the UK. It doesn't matter. And I think we're headed in a positive direction. And for that, in a very twisted way, we can thank the Pumpkinheads.
Well, it's the silver lining in the cloud, isn't it? That it's we've been forced into a corner, and we've looked around and said, "Hey, let's support our own." And I think Canada always did, but now that the interprovincial trade barriers are coming down, and I hope that in terms of television production, CTV, are you listening? That they go ahead and instead of buying another doctor show at MIPCOM that morning they were hung over, why don't you just start producing good stuff here, putting money behind it and promoting it? And Quebec has always got this part right about themselves, which is amazing about our national unity now, because, we're doing something right when Quebec's on board. I was thinking the other day, when's the last time Quebec was this patriotic? Well, never. So it's remarkable that we have this national unity from coast to coast, and we're all engaged in the same focus, which is to support the country we love and do everything we can to keep the tangerine genie's paws off it.
Ted Woloshyn returns in a moment.
I've had the great fortune to say that I've been associated with one of Toronto's finest names in men's clothing for more than 25 years. Tom's Place. Founded by Tom Mahalick's father in 1958, Tom's Place offers brand name men's apparel at unbeatable prices. But more than that, they boast a long-serving, knowledgeable, and friendly staff that can assist you whether you're looking for casual or formal attire. And they have plenty of first-class tailors on site. In addition, Tom and his family are well known for their philanthropic work. So if you're looking to deal with great people who can fulfill your clothing desires at outstanding prices, do yourself a favor and visit Tom's Place. They're open weekdays from 11 to 6, Saturdays 10 to 5, and Sundays noon to 5. You'll find Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Or check them out online at toms-place.com. Tom's Place will suit you.
Now back to Ted Woloshyn.
Well, it's interesting. I always had a great respect for Americans growing up in regards to their patronage. They are so patriotic. I mean, almost every house, I remember going to visit relatives in Rochester, and almost every house had an American flag. Yeah. In Canada, you didn't see Canadian flags, or whatever our flag it was at the time, the Union Jack, I guess, at that age. But I always had a great appreciation for them and thought, good for you. You're a very patriotic nation. We should be more like that. But when you see military, we're laid back. We're laid back, though. We don't brag. We don't, we're kind of more shy, kind of, in the corner.
Yeah, but we having lived there for 3 years, chasing the American dream in the early 90s, we all went down to do a sitcom created at Second City. It was canceled, and I was there struggling for 3 years. Chasing the American dream sired my Canadian one. And I came home with hard and fast lessons learned in the country where trying isn't enough. I just said it wrong, but that ultimately you have to put your shoulder behind the mule and plow and actualize your dream as best you can. And I think that level of patriotism in America, like seeing them put their military personnel on planes first, for instance. And I know they're a warrior nation and all that, but the neglect of the Canadian Armed Forces over the last 50 years has been unconscionable. And I think now that we realize our north is really Canada's Maginot Line, it's time to wake up to certain realities that perhaps we sat on the fence about or ignored.
I agree.
Well said.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now
I want to make the point, too, if I may, that this is not a battle between American people and Canadian people. I'm from the Maritimes, where half of us have cousins who moved to the States to get work, and aunts and uncles, and I have cousins all through America, and I also have American friends and people who are working on behalf of the Pro Bono Group, pro bono in the States. For instance, we have a campaign now for the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness that's totally cast and voiced by American people who gladly chip in to help us out and never ask for a dime or a credit or anything. So it's not a battle between Canadians and Americans. It's and I think we have to keep that in mind as well.
Well, I think and I think that's evident when you watch sporting events now and they start booing the anthem, right? And it's like you try to explain to your American friends, listen, we're not booing you, we're not booing your country, we're just booing the decision regarding these tariffs that your president has made because it hurts us, and it's going to hurt you, it's going to bite you in the ass as well. So it's not about booing the United States, although I think we can back off of that. First of all, I don't think we need anthems at sporting events to begin with. Enough of that. Robert Klein does a brilliant thing. Years ago, he recorded a brilliant thing about going. He says, I get up and, I'm at a Knicks game, and all of a sudden I get up and we're playing the anthem. Oh, well, what country am I in? Latvia? Oh, thank you very much for reminding me.
To get back to what Larry said about being a Maritimer and the connections with what we call the Boston States. So many Cape Bretoners went down to the Boston States to work in the 30s. In fact, my girlfriend's mother used to tell this story. She was from Sydney, and her cousin was from Inverness, and he went down to work in Boston. And he went in. No, he was from Maboo. I'm sorry, Maboo. And he went down to work in Boston, and he went into the post office, and he said to them, "Is the mail in from Maboo yet?" And the postmaster said, "Where the hell is Maboo?" "Maboo! I'll tell you one thing. When we're in Maboo, we sure as hell know where Boston is." Is the mail in from Maboo yet?
Yes.
And this kind of, that great history book by Thomas H. Riddell called Halifax, Warden of the North. It's fantastic history on Nova Scotia. We were known as the 14th colony for the longest time, and we came very, very close to joining New England. Mm-hmm. And so our connection with America it's in blood, eh, Larry? It is.
It is, yes, it is. I would never, and I enjoy visiting the States, and like I said, I have relatives in the States, and I have Americans who have helped me more than you can say throughout my career and otherwise. So it's not a battle between us and them, I don't think.
And then there's the service and the hospitality industry in America. It's like, oh my geez, are we the only ones in the restaurant? They make you feel it $1 million. And you come back here, and not to disparage service across the nation, but Jesus, am I back in Canada or a forgotten satellite of the Soviet bloc? Jesus, would it hurt you to smile if you want that 25% tip?
We were in New Hampshire when my sons were very young. We have 4 sons. There's only 5 years separating the 4 of them. We were all sitting in a restaurant one time, and in New Hampshire, and I think the waiters maybe ignored us for 6 or 7 minutes. And a woman at the next table got up and went and got a pitcher of water and got cereal for the kids. This was not even somebody who was working in the restaurant. This was saying, we can't let serve the kids first. Let's get the kids done first.
Well,
that's the way they think.
Generosity of America. It's just so synonymous with them, And it's good you clarified that, Larry. It's and of course there's no animosity toward Americans in those wonderful spots you wrote either. It's all about us banding together to protect ourselves from somebody who's basically channeled the ghost of Andrew Jackson.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So the whole point here that I was to go backwards a step is that once this all settles, and it will settle in one way or another, I hope that we continue to do what we're doing now, which is showing a greater interest in purchasing Canadian-made products. Of course, there's a whole state of confusion around that as well as to, well, is it a product of Canada or is it made in Canada? Because in order to be a product of Canada, 97 to 90% of the cost of production has to be in Canada, whereas made in Canada is only 51%. So you get into that whole semantic thing where is it really Canadian or is it not Canadian? And now you get to the automobile industry where they talk about steel and automobile parts crossing the border 4 and 5 times. Well, where was this car built?
Well, that's like Friedman's article in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago. He quotes this British economist who says, not one country builds an iPhone.
No.
It's built by, there's components that come and hands involved from, a dozen different nations. And I think that's what's so egregious about Trump's absolutism and the tariff.
What do we do? Put a tariff on the Canada arm? You know what I'm saying?
It's true. Yeah.
I see people complaining and ranting about this on Facebook, and then I think to myself, what are you doing on Facebook? That's an American company.
Well, that's the greatest irony of all is here we are ranting about the Tangerine Genie on Facebook, and Mark, my favorite Martian Zuckerberg, is in league with the guy. All those feudal techno lords we're answering to and using their devices. It's the only way we won't be complicit is if we move to a cave and live on reserves of body fat and rainwater.
I was watching the Four Nations hockey series.
Yeah.
And I thought the irony was just killing me because here we are about to win. Canada's about to win, and we're doing it in the United States. And on top of that, we're playing in an arena called the TD Center. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts that 90% of the people there have no idea what the initials TD stand for. And if they did, they'd probably have a hemorrhage.
No, I bet.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Good point.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, having any sense of geography beyond the parochial world of America. I mean, I said to somebody, I said, "Hey, man, 93% of the country, God bless them, could only find Canada on a map up till a month ago." So it's we're here. There we are.
Well, this is a country that lives without so many of them without passports because really, if you live in the United States, for all intents and purposes, you don't need to leave the United States because if it's too cold in the winter, you can fly down to Arizona, you can fly down to Florida, you can fly down to California. If you live in those places and you want to go skiing, well, then you get on a plane and you fly out to the Rockies or somewhere where it's colder, Vermont, wherever it is. So they've got everything they want there. We don't here. We've got like a Soyuz, 5,000 people where they have rattlesnakes and a little chunk of desert. Talking to my friend who lives in the Soyuz the other day, he said it was 18 degrees, and I said, piss off.
Yeah, it's I've never been on a show where someone's mentioned Soyuz, and I've been there 15 times over the last 28 years.
Well, there you are.
Or 30 years.
A sweatshirt or something for that.
Yeah. It's beautiful, though, that high, dry desert country in BC.
So I
the
hear.
last arm of the Mojave Desert. Yeah, you want this conversation to be interesting. Sorry, Larry, I just went on a bit of a nerd thing there.
Ron, there's nothing you say that's not interesting. I got to tell you this quickly. The first time I saw Ron live, he played at the Laugh Resort in Toronto. I'd never seen him live before. They almost had to call an ambulance for me because I was in convulsions. And that's not a word of exaggeration. I think the people I was with were looking at me like I was, and that was actually the tour, Ron, where you were talking about your life in the States when you were there. That was the tour where you were talking about living in the States, and it was
up and down.
It was so great. Yeah, so great. Man.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. And for someone who writes comedy, you laugh, Larry. So that's an anomaly right there.
Yeah.
A lot of folks who write comedy just go, yeah, I think that's funny.
Yeah.
No, you killed me.
That was America was the life lesson for me. 3 years in Los Angeles, no doubt about it. I don't think I would have stepped into stand-up as with all the passion that I ended up embracing it had I not had those 3 years in paradise. And there's material that came from that show that still has legs. Yeah. I remember my uncle calling me up from Lake Bay. Ronnie, I see you're having lovely weather down there in Los Angeles. Bye, lovely. I said, it's 108 degrees, Uncle Ronald. He said, yes, but it's a dry heat, boy. It's a dry heat.
So is a convection oven.
So's the oven. You don't see me sticking my head in there, boy.
Exactly.
So, right? It was just, and this other fellow that told me, he said I could get me my own little handgun, keep it in a box by my bed with a fluorescent combination, only I would know. Oh, only I know the combination. Family sleeping the fake stars now. I couldn't remember the combination of my high school locker after. How the hell you remember that at 4 a.m. with a head full of sleep? Oh, they're trying to put to bed with a bat and a balaclava. Honey, wake up. What are the kids' birthdays? It was endless. But then those you'd go to Trader Joe's. They said, the country could spoil you with consumer deals. I remember my father came back from would read the papers and go, Ronnie, look at this. Look at the price. Look at that. A wrench, Ronnie, a wrench at Canadian Tire. You went to buy it. You buy a wrench. $4.99, $4.90. You won't get that at Canadian Tire. And he'd throw it in my head. And then there was another time that I was there, and it was like these beautiful indigo nights. And we'd have a glass of wine, and then we go, we need some wine. We go to Trader Joe's, and it's like $7 a bottle. $7 a bottle for a bottle of Cabernet. Jesus, get 10. It was just so easy to become intoxicated with the rewards of paradise, but there's always a price to pay for it. And I think the dream that's exported, or at least the dream I saw made manifest when I was a kid in MacInnis National Park, when that Airstream trailer came in, you realize that, nothing comes for free. There's a price for everything. And the biggest price that Canada's paying right now is that a certain percentage of the American population invested their faith that this strongman, billionaire, bully, bullshitting, megalomaniacal man on a messianic mission of MAGA-fest destiny to crush our country was going to solve all their problems. And it's just not going to happen.
Boy, they're in for a rude awakening.
Way to bring the room to a screeching halt, Ron.
No, the point I was going to make, Ron, is I assume that on your tour that's upcoming, certainly you'll be covering this. I would imagine in your stand-up.
Yeah, I will. Yeah. And I think the one I start in the fall is going to be called the Elbows Up Tour, because that seems to be one. Oh boy, someone's gone. It's my Godfather theme to the phone.
Yes, I can hear that.
And I will.
Another
Yeah,
great
but you know what?
American film.
Hold on 1 second. Oh, geez, I got to go. 10 after 3. It's the dentist calling. I got to go. I got that dental appointment at 3, and here they are calling me. But I will tell you, in terms of what you said, Lair, it's not all one flavor of politics, because to do all this for 90 minutes, I'd lose them. It's too much of one flavor. So I'll throw everything in there, and about daily life and, the challenges of getting older. And I mean, I should have called it the Red Bull and Robaxacet tour is what I should have called it. Anyway, boys, I'll see you. Thanks, Larry.
Thanks, Ron. Great seeing you.
Thanks for inviting me, Ted. Take her easy, lads. Bye now.
All right, that's Ron James. That's going to do it for another week. Don't forget to check out our website, www.tedwoloshyn.ca. Any questions or any past episodes you'd like to listen to, they're all available for you. And of course, while you're online, don't forget to fill out your organ and tissue donation card. You could change or even save a life. In the meantime, have a great week.
The Ted Woloshyn podcast has been brought to you by Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. And ETP Canada, providing estate administration with ease. Technical production by Paul Gatt. Music by Bike Thieves. For more on this podcast and our sponsors, and to talk to Ted, go to www.tedwoloshyn.ca.